Tokyo Xtreme Racer 2025 is not your typical racing game. This is not Need for Speed Underground Japan version, you feel me? At this point, we're all used to expecting an abundance of features and choices from our racing games, and in my honest opinion, that has made us very spoiled in that regard. Judging Tokyo Xtreme Racer purely on the number of features it has compared to something like Need for Speed or Forza Horizon would not be fair. Tokyo Xtreme Racer is a special kind of racing beast entirely, and the word of the day is niche. It's a racing series developed by longtime studio Genki, dating back to the, at this point, ancient year of 1998, starting on the Sega Dreamcast before moving exclusively to PlayStation 1 and 2. What kept it from worldwide success was a combination of localization issues and a slew of bad marketing decisions, like trying to port the game to Xbox 360, which even till this day remains as an unpopular console in the Japanese market, followed by a pivot to mobile in 2007 that went down about as well as you would expect. Eventually, Genki threw in the towel and went for almost 2 decades quiet, until 2025, when Tokyo Xtreme Racer came back for PC and consoles as a reboot of the franchise. Prior to around 2023, I had never heard of the series, I admit. Then, by a pure chance and genuine curiosity, I booted up Tokyo Xtreme Racer 3 on my PlayStation 2 emulator, and I could tell right then and there, this was something different. So, when I booted up Tokyo Xtreme Racer 2025, my initial reaction was, Tokyo Xtreme Racer 3 with a much needed facelift.
That sounds about right.
Yeah.
And since I know exactly what to expect from it, I felt instantly at home. One last thing before I continue with the review, and please with the cherry on top, don't take this the wrong way when I say this game is not for everybody. It doesn't mean you can't enjoy it, quite the opposite. You just have to go in knowing what it is and what it isn't. Do that, and you are looking at hours upon hours of really good time. To all the Japanese viewers and such with amazing Japanese language verbal skills, please forgive me if I mispronounce something in the video. Let's go. To my understanding, the story of Tokyo Xtreme Racer 2025 is essentially a continuation of the franchise, taking into account the real-life 18 years of Genki's hiatus. The whole plot revolves around the racing scene in the well-known Shuto Expressway. You are, for lack of a better word,
nobody,
with a dream to become the best racer in the Shuto Expressway and achieve the status of a legend. Getting there means evolving, buying faster cars, learning to tune them and drive them to perfection, and beating anyone who dares to stand in your way. Instead of cutscenes, the story is told through the typical for Japanese games type of old school visual novel style texts. And I would dare say, even with my limited knowledge of Tokyo Xtreme Racer's wider universe, this game is chock full of what you'd call nods to previous titles in the series. You meet legacy racing teams like representatives of the 13 Devils, Rolling Guys, Phantom 9, and more, all who carry history from earlier entries. You even get to encounter legendary lone wolves like Cinderella Past Midnight, Treacherous Jackknife, Melancholy Angel, White Charisma, and the list goes on. For a newcomer to the series, those will probably mean one big nothing burger, and Genki clearly knows this. So, rather than turning the whole thing into series history lesson, the story delivers just enough chunks of information through visual novel conversations with people and racers you meet in parking areas across the expressway, giving the average player enough to put 2 and 2 together as to why a specific legendary racer X is so basically worshipped. And there is one thing that really elevates the story for me. I'm not sure if others have felt it the same way, so let me describe it for you. When you start at the bottom, you race the lower tier teams that inhabit the expressway right now, the new Youngbloods. Past legends of the expressway are already gone and retired, not interested in the racing scene anymore because as far as they're concerned there is no thrill anymore. Whoever you speak with, you sense this feel of sad nostalgia for the old days. Not really the racing scene is dead kind of thoughts, but more like people say something along the lines of racing on the expressway is not what it used to be. And with your racing success, one guy as a lone racer with no team affiliation and beating whole other teams one by one, you start attracting attention. People start looking at you as what the racing scene had longed for a long time, to the extent of even making old legends of the racing world come out of retirement so they can see who is this new challenger. This gave me a unique sense of progression, which I don't believe I've played a game that is able to replicate that same effect. And based on all that, Genki, through this masterful, I dare say, display of storytelling, gives you something to think about. And that is that there's a difference between being the best and being the best of all time. Because the second title doesn't go only towards the one who is at the top right now, but it goes to those who are able to beat the legends too, putting their own mark on history. Story, 5 out of 5 stars. As I mentioned in the intro, comparing Tokyo Xtreme Racer to something like Need for Speed, The Crew, or Forza Horizon in terms of features is just not a fair fight. But whatever this game offers has been done with such precision and care that it carves out its own identity completely. Here's what makes a niche game. The entire game takes place on the Shudo Expressway in Tokyo. No city streets or countryside. The expressway is your battleground, and I'm not using that word loosely. There is only one type of race: highway battles. Most of the time it's one-on-one, though occasionally can be 2 or even 3 against 1. You drive the expressway until you find the racer to challenge, and once the race begins, both drivers get a health bar at the top of the screen made of SP or spirit points, as the game calls them. Similar to a fighting game, whoever's bar drains first loses. You drain your opponent's bar by pulling away beyond a certain distance, or by blocking them, forcing them into walls or into traffic, all of which accelerate the drain considerably. Of course, the same rule applies to you as well. There are about 55 racing teams to beat, and on average comprised of 4 to 5 members each, sometimes fewer, sometimes more. You need to beat every member of the team, and the team leader will emerge and challenge you directly. Beyond the teams, there are also dozens of lone wolf bosses and solo wandering racers. The lone wolf bosses appear once you rack up a specific number of wins or eliminate enough teams, and the solo wanderers function as side bosses and show up at certain points in the game, each with their own specific requirements to unlock a race against them. Requirements can range from specific car model only, or parts, down to obscure ones such as you having a specific region license plate. In total, we're talking about 457 racers. On top of all the racing, the game has an RPG element built around 2 currencies, CP and BP. CP stands for cash points, which is your wallet. You fill it by beating racers with additional bonuses for clean cornering and near misses. You spend the cash on cars, parts, services like nitrous refills and tire changes, and at a certain point in the game, you can even call on legendary mechanic to give your car a random performance upgrade that lasts only for that night. BP stands for battle points, also earned by beating racers and spent on unlocking cars and perks across several skill trees back at your garage. As the name suggests, the car tree unlocks vehicles for you to buy and use in highway battles. The game runs exclusively on Japanese brands, so no European or American cars anywhere.
Yes! 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 Yes!
You'll find different models across different years from expected names like Honda, Toyota, Subaru, Mazda, but also brands you wouldn't normally associate with car racing like Suzuki, Daihatsu, and there's even minivans and even open bed delivery trucks in there as well. JDM fans are gonna be in heaven. And if you have a specific car and model you've always loved, there's a very high chance it's in here. The tuning tree unlocks higher performance tier parts, though most stay locked until you beat a certain boss. Beyond that, you have the driver tree for upgrading personal abilities like attack, defense, and toughness with different build options to suit your style, and the perk tree as your personal development branch where you can increase your currency limits, you can boost race rewards, and even permanently cut your costs on cars and parts. The game can be played in one of two modes. Enjoy mode is the easier difficulty. Tire wear happens only during race. All skill tree upgrades are available from the start as long as you got the battle points. Challenge mode is, in my opinion, how this game is meant to be played. Skill trees stay locked until you beat specific bosses, which slows your progress considerably. It also brings back two mechanics that are cornerstones of the franchise for anyone who played the older titles. That is, water temperature and oil temperature. Drive at high speeds for an extended period and your car, just like in real life, will overheat. If it happens, it will lose a massive chunk of power and the car will enter what is known as limp mode, moving just enough to keep rolling but absolutely not in any shape to race until it cools down.
No! God!
The best way to cool down is either engaging autopilot, which lets your car cruise the expressway at the speed limit while you take a breather without pausing the game, handy if you need to keep building travel distance for certain boss requirements, or pulling into a parking area where the car resets and cools off entirely.
Nice.
Tire management is another cornerstone mechanic. Even at low speeds, you're wearing your tires down and losing grip over time. In Tokyo Xtreme Racer 3, the more you wear down your tires, the more turns the expressway into a giant ice skating rink. Here I didn't notice any dramatic change in grip, though in full honesty I never let them go all the way down anyway.
It's not a car that responds well to my rather brutal driving.
Either way, every night starts with fresh set of tires when you leave the garage, and every parking area gives you the option to spend some cash on a new set if you want to keep the night going rather than retire for the night. The parking areas deserve a specific mention. Beyond cooling the car and restocking tires and nitrous, there are also places where spectators give you lore bits and information about the world around you, and where parked racers you haven't beaten yet can be challenged on the spot. As for the expressway itself, you choose one of two directions to drive at the start of each run, and the direction is essentially your commitment for the night. The whole layout is meant that there is almost no way to simply switch to the other side. Your options are to retire for the night and choose a new direction the next session, or find one of the specific parking areas that lets you choose your direction of travel when you leave. That is pretty much how your night is gonna go. I do have a couple of critiques, but when I think about it, they are more of a design choices rather than gameplay ones, so I'll save them for the next chapter. Gameplay? 5 out of 5 stars. Tokyo Xtreme Racer is a beautiful game with sharp graphics that runs well on most modern machines, zero performance issues on my end, which is always a good start. Audio design is top quality, engine sounds are realistic and crisp, and the soundtrack is a mix of typical Japanese music containing classic tunes from previous titles, alongside new tracks made specifically for this entry. The overall feel is like being inside of a racing anime, for lack of better comparison. The one audio caveat is that the songs are split across different progression stages, so if you spend a significant amount of time in a particular level gap, you will be hearing the same tracks on repeat during races over and over again. Don't get me wrong, despite not being my particular cup of tea in terms of racing music, the tracks are pretty cool, but no offense, after the 20th time though, I'd rather just mute them entirely. Something else that needs, at minimum, an option to turn off is the constant pinging sounds when navigating any menu. I understand it's typical for Japanese games, but especially when you're digging through car settings, that pinging reaches a level of annoyance called ear bleed that I was not prepared for.
Make it stop!
The car models are beautiful and highly detailed. Each one requires a specific approach when driving, depending on whether it's a front or rear wheel drive or otherwise. And this is where I want to address something up front. because this game clearly has car enthusiasts in mind. The whole squeezing real performance out of your car will mean getting into the car settings whether you like it or not. I've been driving for more than 10 years. I'm not about to open my own service shop, but I know my way around the car. So when I say the car setting explanations here are surface level at best, that's coming from someone who isn't completely lost. For the average racing gamer who just wants a good time and it's not preparing for a future career as a racing mechanic, some of these settings are going to feel genuinely daunting. I know it's a franchise staple and I'm not against it, far from it. But if the game is going to ask you to engage with these mechanics, I believe genuinely it has a responsibility to explain them properly to you. There is no way to test your settings in closed environment, nothing to tell you whether the changes you made are actually moving things in the right direction. It's a trial and error guesswork without the knowledge base to back it up. I believe in theory you can probably pass the whole game with default car settings, but then you get the feel you're not having the full experience intended, and that, I hope you agree with me, is a meaningful gap. Car handling is very responsive and noticeably better than previous titles where it felt considerably more rigid. Since the expressway is about 80% straight sections with very few corners, the game leans into grippy handling rather than drift mechanics. The layout of the game itself makes drift builds essentially pointless. Car customization is a 50-50 for me. There are plenty of stickers, vinyls, and other cosmetic goodies to make your car genuinely unique. There's a good selection of rims too. The disappointment is in the body parts section. For a game that fancies itself with big performance tweaking, you would think that the aero parts must play a role too, at least they did in previous titles. Well, the aero parts do absolutely all, whether airflow or downforce or you name it. It's just pure eye candy, nothing else. And when it comes to the section of bumpers, side skirts, spoilers and bonnets, you get a choice of 3 for each category and you better be happy with that. They look great and are specific to each car model, but 3 options feels like bare minimum. For one, Tokyo Xtreme Racer 3 had more selection, so I'm not complaining for the sake of complaining. Now, giving credit where credit is absolutely due. The Shudo Expressway itself, the developers laser scanned the entire thing over 180 kilometers of real asphalt, capturing every turn and twist down to the uneven surface sections. Navigating it in the early game is a different story. Every section has its own name. C1 in loop, C1 out loop, Haneda, Daiba, and so on. I appreciate they've been transliterated into Latin letters, so I don't have to take kanji night classes, but on the map itself, none of the sections are labeled. Early on, I promise, you will take wrong exits and get confused more than once. Which matters more than it sounds, because when you're still in a slow car, you have a long way to drive between parking areas, with no way to skip it, and if you choose one direction, you're pretty much commit to it with almost no way to switch. You have to drive the full distance to the next parking area at a controlled speed, so the car doesn't overheat, just to have a chance to switch direction. Now, what's behind frustration door number 2, you ask? Not every parking area lets you choose your direction when you leave either. Some lock you into continuing the same way you came in, which I don't believe was the case in previous titles. The saving grace is a fast travel perk you can unlock in the skill trees at certain point, which does help enormously, but having to grind to earn something like that left a bitter taste in my mouth. It feels like a deliberate way to pad early game time rather than meaningful progression unlock. Learning the expressway is going to feel like oops, wrong turn again, on repeat, until about a midpoint of the game where you will just memorize it and finally click with you. The map shows you clearly who you've beaten, who you haven't, and where any specific racer is currently located so you can plan your exit accordingly. The game also has a codex listing every single racer with their bios, some of which are very entertaining to read. You can race anyone as many times as you want, but you only need to beat them once for it to count. The fact that some of those racers had me losing 5 or 6 times in a row before I finally got them is information that will stay strictly between me and the game. Winning against racers you already beaten is gonna bring you additional battle points and money. One more thing worth mentioning is that you can race the regular traffic on the expressway too. Beating them won't earn you any battle points, but it does bring in money and stacks your win counter, which does matter if you are running a perk that boosts your attack for every win you rack up that night. The things that I criticized here are personal frustrations more than deal breakers. If none of them bothered you specifically the same way they bothered me, genuinely happy for you. And if something else got under your skin and I didn't mention it, drop it in the comments, I'll be curious to know. As for design, 4 out of 5 stars. Tokyo Xtreme Racer 2025 is not a perfect game. The design has its frustrations and some of them are ones Genki should have seen coming. But a game that does what it sets out to do this well earns the right, in my opinion, to have its flaws treated as the price of admission rather than the verdict. What Genki pulled off with this reboot goes beyond just making a good racing game. I dare to say it's even an achievement in and of itself. They brought back a franchise most of the world had forgotten, reintroduced it to a generation that never even knew about it, and didn't water down a single thing that made it special. The Shudo Expressway is still the battleground, and the highway battles are still the soul of the whole thing. And that story, while simplistic as it may seem at first, that feeling of being a nobody who slowly becomes the reason legends come back out of retirement just to face you, I haven't felt a sense of progression like that in a long time, maybe even ever. If you've been on the fence about this game, time to get off that fence. Take the leap, knowing what it is, give it the patience it asks for, and it will give you something most racing games nowadays simply cannot. Final score for Tokyo Xtreme Racer 2025, a well-deserved 5 out of 5 stars. Thank you all for watching, and if you got to the end of the video, if you like my fully devoid of any AI interference content and want to support the real creators here on YouTube, make sure you give this video a like and subscribe to my channel for more game reviews in the future. This is SaltyKal, see you next time.